Are Western countries like the UK and the US ones of capitalism or ones of socialism or communism? Now that might sound like a weird topic to start the video, and it might sound like a weird topic for a video, and it might sound like a stupid and pointless question. It's something that was inspired by a comment that I got yesterday. Someone left a comment on one of my videos, someone who very well may be watching, saying, Aaron, you talk about the fact that you want capitalism, but then you complain about the price of homes, you complain about the pay that you get in jobs, when in actuality these are parts of a capitalist system. And that inspired this video because I have a very interesting topic for discussion here around this topic, and I think if you watch until the end you may be surprised about what we end up discussing. You join me on a very mild autumn day. It's very clearly becoming winter now, as number one, you may be able to tell, I have a cold, so that's great, and also all of the leaves are starting to decay on the ground and fall off the trees. Back on topic though, let's talk about this discussion. So, if you've been watching the channel for the last couple of weeks, I've been absolutely pumping out content, multiple times a day, and the reason for that, just to cut a long story short, is because I'm trying to make it here on YouTube, right? And in my life experience, the more you try, the luckier you get. I don't know anyone who's tried hard and not got anything, but a lot of the content that I've been making is around money, it's around finance, it's around social issues, and that's kind of what I like to talk about. And a lot of my videos, people have been saying I've been moaning about the system when it's just capitalism. Now here's the thing about me. I am for capitalism. I know a lot of people, oh, there's a little robin on the tree. I don't know if I'll be able to film it. Just a tiny bird in there, if you can see it anywhere. There it is. How beautiful. There are some nice things to autumn. Anyway, back on point. A lot of people see a thumbnail of me, some young guy. The bird's literally just right up against me. It's coming closer. And they think that I am just going to be about some liberal communism or socialism, someone who doesn't have an understanding of finance. And here's the thing, right? I run my own businesses. I am a direct beneficiary of capitalism. The harder I work to break out of the 9-to-5 system, the luckier I get. If I don't want to break out of the 9-to-5 system, then I accept my place in society. That is how true capitalism works. So I do agree with capitalism in its truest sense. So, as someone who says that they're a capitalist, how can I complain about the situation that we find ourselves in? How can I moan about house prices being too high? How can I moan about jobs not paying enough when that is just literally fair capitalism? And here's where we get to the crux of the issue. And this is why I ask if places like the UK are truly capitalist. You see, what we have in the UK, and the reason why I think myself and a lot of people want more from society and the government, is we have a high tax state, right? We have a high tax state. I've made a video yesterday, not necessarily complaining, but just discussing the fact that as time goes on, as my businesses get more and more successful as they are, it's becoming increasingly likely that I'm going to have to pay more and more taxes, not necessarily just higher rates, but just more different taxes. And again, in a high tax society, I think it's less unreasonable for people to demand more from the governments. If we lived in a place like some nations in the world, or some perhaps states in, America, it depends obviously to what extent you want to go. If we lived in a place where taxes were lower and interference from the government was less, I would say it's a completely fair game. If jobs don't pay well, fair. If house prices go up, that's completely fair. The trouble that I have with this argument is, in the UK, not only do we pay an awful lot of taxes, the government has a lot of say on what can and can't be done. For instance, the housing market, the appreciation of house values. It's because the housing market has been commoditised. It's because government has made regulations on building new houses. Now, if we're genuinely honest, in a genuinely and completely free market, and I know some people are going to say, well, that'd bring other issues such as quality of homes, whatever, but just hear me out on this point. It's an argument's sake, it's a theory. In theory, an argument's sake, if we were in a truly free market, property builders would have built a lot more properties. They'd have been allowed to. Every single time that someone tries to build a property in the UK, it seems that they need to go through a tremendous amount of planning permissions, a tremendous amount of rules and regulations, and also they're always opposed by local councils and residents, right? And obviously what that means is that the government interferes to an extent, whether it's local government or obviously national government with regulations and laws. Now, in a true market, in a true capitalist market, would house prices be this high? Because I don't think that they would. I think that there'd be some clever entrepreneurs, some clever investors, as there are now, but these people are more limited in places like the UK than they would have otherwise been. But let's just say there'll be some clever entrepreneurs and investors who can find a way to house the masses, build relatively decent properties that people actually want to buy, and sell them for a profit. That's capitalism. What we have here in the housing market is not that. People struggle to build houses, which means that anyone who literally not wants a nice house, wants anywhere to live full stop, that's their own, or even to rent, is almost going to have to take whatever they can get, because options are few and far between. So that's one example of the fact that that's not a true capitalist system, right? In a true capitalist system, I believe, and maybe my understanding is wrong, but in a true capitalist system, I believe it would be the case that someone like me who runs businesses, I run multiple businesses now, and I'm building them, I think that you'd get either completely or almost completely left alone, not having to pay 20% tax on revenue plus income taxes, etc. I think you'd get almost completely left alone, if not some incentives or help from the government. Because, again, if my businesses scale, depends which businesses I'm talking about, it depends which direction I go in. But let's just say if I had a lot more free capital, I could, in theory, employ someone to do my eBay listings for me, to edit my videos for me if I wanted to, etc., etc. That would be a creation of a new job. And also, my businesses bring new money into this economy, right? But at the same time, I'm taxed to death on them. And that's why I get mad. People don't necessarily seem to understand the situation of the UK, because I understand we have a lot of international viewers from countries where the tax systems are different, the social structure is different, and that's obviously fine, but context is very important. And in places like the UK, we are in a very, very high tax society. Generally, I think in high tax societies, the people are looked after. And some countries around the world do have that sort of kind of hybrid between socialism in a way and capitalism. I think a good example is countries in the north of Europe, and a consequence of that seems to be, I don't live there so I might be wrong, but it seems to be that the people are looked after better, there are better incentives for people, and obviously there is still a free or a relatively free market. What we have in the UK is over and under regulated capitalism at the same time. People like myself, who are on the come up, right, from a poor background, a working class background, maybe a middle class background, right, are taxed to death. They are given every incentive thrown at them to struggle, right? And then at the absolute top, the people get away with it. It's two-tier capitalism, and it's not true capitalism. And that's why I think people have a right to moan. That's why I think people have a right to complain and ask, at least ask, why is this? And what is this looking like? Because from what I'm seeing right now, the incentives of capitalism, the idea of, you can work hard and you can benefit and invest in the right places. Look at what we're seeing in the UK. I'm only going to talk about the UK here, because I don't live in America, I don't live in Australia, I don't live in Canada, I don't know what the tax structures are like there. Forgive me for that, it's not my home country. But here's the point, right? In the UK at least, income taxes, council tax, which is basically some sort of a property tax, inheritance taxes, capital gains tax, road tax, fuel tax, duty tax, value-added tax. These are all of the taxes that your average person can be expected to pay in their life, like regularly. Obviously, inheritance tax and things like that are perhaps more rare, maybe once or twice in a lifetime. But things like fuel duty, value-added tax, they're the kind of things that we all pay every day. Income tax, pay it every day. And I understand that we do have some social measures in the UK. Obviously, there is a benefit system, there is a National Health Service, which is to an extent free, and a lot of other services, but obviously they are now completely down the drain. They're in the tip, right? I'm not complaining. It's an absolute privilege to have these things, but the fact of the matter is, potholes in the road are crazy, right? NHS waiting times are immense. And like I say, this is where the hybrid stops working here in the UK, because certain countries in the world, it seems that they have high taxes and the people get the benefits of it. They get an incentive to be taxed at, say, 30, 40, 50%. If you're getting 50% tax, but everything works, and you can send your kids to school safely, and they don't have to worry about the public transport, and maybe it's free, and the vehicles are clean and modern and nice, and they turn up on time. If you can not have to worry about your mum or your dad or your gran in hospital dying because they might not get seen in time, that is where I would feel a lot more comfortable paying such a high amount of tax. But obviously this is a thing, and this is a conversation that not a lot of people are even comfortable having for some reason, some strange reason. The truth of the matter is, we're not really in true capitalism here, right? The government takes all of the money, spends it where they see fit, which seemingly, at least seemingly, is more and more on useless projects, and projects that people in the country, genuine citizens, the people like myself and you guys who all pay tax, projects that we can't get on side with, things that we fundamentally disagree with. They're against our morals, they're against our desires and our wants and our vision for the country. That's where all the money goes. True capitalism would be we spend our money where we want, right? We spend our money, and where we spend our money dictates the course of the country. If people spend money on building houses, we have more houses. If we have more houses, I don't know, maybe people will have more children. If we have more jobs, maybe people will feel more comfortable spending. We don't have that here, right? Because, again, I've said this example before. Look at value-added tax, right? Value-added tax is a perfect example. I've heard this all through my young life of, you're not a taxpayer. When I was 18 and below. Obviously, certain taxes you do pay, but generally speaking, most people don't. And I always thought, oh, well, that's fair enough. As I've grown up and I've educated myself a lot more and continued to make more money than even what I did at that age, I now know everyone pays tax, right? Homeless guy sat on the street pays tax because someone will give him, I don't know, let's say for argument, I'm not saying it's realistic, someone gives him a £10 note. He goes into McDonald's to finally get himself some food, it's taxed at 20%, right? Everyone pays tax. Homeless man on the street pays tax. Office worker pays tax. That's just the fact of it. So unlike capitalism, where let's say I don't like the new iPhone, so I buy a Samsung, that's choice. That's not what we have from the government. There's no opt-out option of the taxes. There's no opt-out. There's not like I don't like how the country's being run, so I'm not going to pay taxes. There's not, I'm not going to use the NHS, so I'm not going to pay into it, for example. That it just gets taken anyway. And again, that's completely fine, in my opinion. I am happy, personally, to pay that if I can see the benefits around me. But all I'm seeing, a lot of the time, is roads that have got massive potholes in, that they're doing the car in. Again, services that you can't access. Incentives and investments that don't work for us as people. And then I ask, well, why? And also, is that even capitalism anymore? Let me know in the comment section, guys. I'm sure you will.